Hello, I am Brian Kurth with Revere Skills-Based Volunteering Software. And with me today for 3 tips in 3 minutes for CSR leaders is Sue Carter-Kahl. Sue, welcome on board.
Thanks so much for having me, Brian. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Well, likewise. Please share a little bit about the work you're doing with your consultancy and the types of clients you work with, and perhaps even some of your favorite areas within the huge CSR social impact umbrella.
Yes. So my consulting and facilitation focus on the value that volunteers bring to the organizations that they serve. And so I've worked with nonprofits as well as philanthropic organizations in the CSR space, as well as foundations with that make grants, to really focus on how do we talk about volunteer impact. And that's been the subject of my research as well. So I really like to bridge theory and practice so that we can make a stronger case for volunteer engagement.
Qualitative and quantitative. Perfect. It's a good combo. Awesome. Well, let's hear your first tip.
Thanks. So my first tip is to think about crafting service that falls at the intersection of the community, of the nonprofit that's hosting the service, of the company, as well as the employee volunteer. So if you think of that as a Venn diagram, how do we really create and facilitate service that falls at the intersection of those? Mm-hmm. I've seen working on the nonprofit side that sometimes companies are so focused in terms of how do we position the company, or how do we just reflect what the employees need, that they're not as concerned about what is the community we're trying to serve need, what's convenient for them, what will suit their needs, what honors their confidentiality, as well as what does our nonprofit hosts need from us. And so thinking about how are we finding service that can meet all of those needs is really strong. So again, thinking about how do we craft service at the intersection of community, nonprofit, company, and employee volunteer.
And that intersection is usually quite large, larger than what some folks probably assume.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Good. What's tip number 2?
So the second tip is to consider capturing impact in ways that go beyond the quantitative. I find that a lot of times, even in the way we talk about measures, metrics, it really focuses on what can be counted, on what can be priced. And a lot of times when it comes to service, we're talking about the quality of a program or service that we're trying to contribute. So it's not that we're just trying to teach a child to read. We're trying to make reading fun and exciting and get them enthusiastic about reading. We're not just trying to move a meal from point A to B. We're trying to do that with dignity and respect and care. And so we want to think about how do we capture, how do we reveal, how do we demonstrate impact, because that includes the quantitative and the qualitative, which when you marry those together can be a really powerful way to tell a stronger story.
Awesome. I love the word reveal. You don't hear that very often, but you being the quantitative and qualitative, that's a key word. I love that you just used that, because that's really so many of us working in the space. We're oftentimes so focused on the qualitative that we forget that, hey, maybe there first should be a bit of a reveal at the beginning, the middle, and or at the end. So awesome. Yes. Good point. Tip number 3. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I'll just back up to say that some research found that one of the things is that volunteers are how the work gets done in a lot of organizations, but they're often overlooked and kind of invisible. So when you think about revealing, that helps us think about, well, what are all the other things happening that maybe aren't obvious?
Wow. I love that. That's cool. Number 3.
Yes. So number 3 tip is to consider the return on purpose and value, as well as the return on investment. Again, we can sometimes get so focused on what are the financial returns of service? How is that coming back to our company? How does that reflect in our employee engagement numbers, that we haven't considered why are we doing this in the first place? What are we trying to express as part of our corporate or other company values? And that can really align us well with the community and with the nonprofits. And so thinking not only about how do we find a return on investment, but how do we talk about the return on our purpose and the return on our values as a way to demonstrate impact in maybe new and creative ways?
Awesome. Fantastic. Sue, thank you so much for your 3 very informative, revealing tips. And if folks watching and listening would like to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do so?
Yes, always love to connect and hear what's working, or maybe where there's opportunities to dig on through what's not working. You can find me on LinkedIn and Twitter. And I also explore some of these topics in a little more detail on my blog, volunteercommons.com, which is another way to connect with me.
Awesome. And also your website.
Yes.
Sue Carter Kahl Consulting.com, if I remember correctly.
That's correct.
And Kahl, just so everyone who's listening and watching, it's spelled differently than what you think. It's Kahl.
Yes.
So Sue Carter, looks like Kahl, but it's pronounced Kahl, consulting.com.
Yes.
So, Sue, thank you so much for offering up your tips in 3 minutes. And as always, thank you for your contributions to the space of corporate social responsibility and social impact. It's very valued. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brian.